Welcome to Write Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 179, Great Characters Make Great Series, an interview with Tom Threadgill, coming to you on Thursday, February 6, 2020. I just finished up more than an hour of riffing with Tom. Both of us just kind of going back and forth, bouncing around like pinballs, but not without a purpose. We stayed within the pinball machine of writing. And even when our thoughts took us off in crazy directions, eventually we were like, there's a story there. So I think that you're going to find this to be a great, fun interview. Tom has done some mentoring for writers, so he's got a lot of tips that he's offering from beginning writers to people in the middle, and it's just a fun interview talking about all the different things having to do with writing series, writing a single character in a series, his belief that the characters are the ones who really make the story great, and for all of you who are not plotters and who the whole idea of plotting seems scary, Tom is 100% a seat of the pants writer. He doesn't even have an idea of where he's going next, if I understood what he was saying correctly. So for all of you who are like, oh, finally, I just want to hear someone like me, Tom's your guy. If you're a pantser, you're going to love this interview. It's going to make you feel like, I'm with my people. In the meantime, at the moment that you're listening to this, I may still be on a train back from Stockholm. Very exciting. This is the first time that I've taken a train. The first time that I went to Stockholm, and I've only been there once, I took a plane. But it occurred to me that the train was going to be way faster because even though a plane takes less time in the air, the amount of time that it takes to get to the airport, get through security, wait at the gate, and then get from the airport to downtown is actually the same amount of time that it takes to be on the train, where I can just sit and relax and write or read or nap or whatever. So I'm really excited because I have a bunch of things that I have to do on the way to Stockholm, but on the way back, my hope is that I can sit down and work on Love at the Clip and Curl, book 2 in the Strays of Loon Lake series, which I have recently started and I'm so in love with right now. Plus, the reason I'm going to Stockholm is because I'm meeting, or at the moment that you're listening, have met with Jennifer Dornbush, who you may remember has been on the show talking about forensics, as she is a writer and forensics expert, and drumroll please, the first confirmed speaker for the first Write Now Workshop Writers Conference, coming to you from Malmö, Sweden in October 7th through 11th. Do a save the date on your calendar. It is the first, I think the first or second, something like that, is the first weekend in October. So this is the second weekend in October. And you may have heard me say before, the Wednesday, Thursday portion is going to be for people who are looking to have some pre-planned tourist activities. You can just sort of buy that package, and I and some of my writer friends here will take you around Malmö and Copenhagen and show you some sights. And then the 9th and 10th, the Friday and Saturday, is officially the Writers Conference main portion. Sunday will be another add-on, which will be more of the spiritual, creative, in your head, in your heart aspects of being a writer and coming up with new stories all the time. Plus, I just had an idea today that I should record the podcast live during one of those days of the conference. So I'll do that in one of the evenings. And then I was listening to Mark Dawson and James Blatch as they were bantering about on their show, which, yes, Mark, James, love the banter. Don't stop it. And if you listen to their show, you know what that joke is about. But I was listening to them banter about different times. Actually, I'd just been listening to so many episodes in a row at the gym. So they were at the NINC conference and talking about having a beer with somebody, and they were at the 20 Books Las Vegas talking about having a beer with somebody, and different other times. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have this great brewery here called Malmö Brewery, and it has got delicious craft beer. And for people like me who don't really like beer, they also have some amazing sours and ciders, and it's just got this fabulous fabulous atmosphere. It's kind of dark and wood. And anyway, I was like, should totally take people to that after one of the evenings of the conference. So I have lots of ideas, super excited. It's going to be all about encouraging you, providing you really sound teaching in various categories of mostly fiction, but also some other things. I have pretty much confirmed that I will have one person speaking on writing for video games. There are a lot of other things that I want to tell you that may be coming up, but I'm just kind of going to space it out a little bit, make sure that things are confirmed. I want this to be the conference that makes you feel like I'm so excited to get home and start writing again, or I'm so excited to get back to my hotel room and start writing again. It's going to be all about positive energy, letting you know that you can do it, and here are the tools to do it. So I hope that you will save the date, October 7th through 11th, 2020. This is a vacation destination writers conference for you. No matter where you are, even if you're someplace in Sweden, come down to Malmö and we will have a great time encouraging each other and making sure that our toolbox is getting filled up with more new tools, and you will be able to write better books and make you feel more confident and more full of peace and joy about what you do for your creative outlet, hopefully, than what you've felt in a long time. That's the goal. All right. So without further ado, let me take you to Tom, because we had such a great long interview that I don't want to keep you too long with a long, I don't know, can you say bantering if you're the only person talking? Do I banter with myself? I think not. I'm sort of bantering with you, but yeah, I don't think that's the right word. I do love talking to you, and at some point you should let me know if you absolutely hate it, like there is at least one person who hates it on Mark Dawson's show, which is just sort of funny. Again, sorry, you have to be listening to the show to know why I'm laughing about this, but I do love talking to you, mostly because my goal for this show, my goal for the Writers Conference, my goal actually within my books, in the books that I write, is to encourage you and make you feel great about what you do, great about who you are, that you are an individual with these fabulous talents that you're working on. Either you've just started or you're in the middle of it. If you're in the middle of it, you might need more encouragement even than if you just started. And that is what I want to be for you. So whatever part of my work life, my creative life that you get involved in, I really hope that you feel me telling you and believing in you that you have got a gift that is going to be a blessing to the world and make you feel like you've really been able to use all of yourself when you get your writing done. That's certainly how I feel, and I want to make sure that I'm encouraging other people because it's important, and I don't want you to think that it's not important. Other people will tell you it's not, but the fact is they're actually just wrong. I mean, think about the way that books make you feel when you read them, like the really good ones that resonate with you. And there's so many great books out there that don't resonate with everybody. I mean, I'm not sure there is a book that resonates with every single person in the whole world, especially as the population grows. I think that's increasingly impossible with 8 billion people. But there are people who are really going to resonate with your story. They want to hear it. They want you to tell it. They want you to tell it well. So that's why I want you to be always looking for new tips, new tricks, new ideas to become a better writer, a little bit at a time, until you look back and you go, wow, I've really progressed in the last year, the last couple of years. This is what I want for you. This is what I hope that you're getting out of the things that I do. And I'm super excited for you. And Tom has actually been great at helping to be part of that kind of mission that I have. So listen to him, look for the tidbits that you can use in the things that he's talking about that he does, or the advice that he's given to authors that he's mentored in the past. And also he has a brand new book out called Collision of Lies. So look for that at the bookstore as well. It's really, I really liked constantly every chapter going, I got to read one more chapter because I still don't know what's going on and I want to know who did it and why. So if you like books like that, Collision of Lies, that's Tom's new book. All right. Have a great week. We will talk to you later. Here's Tom. Today's guest is Tom Threadgill. Tom was born and raised in Memphis back when the muddy Mississippi was less riverish and more streamish. His childhood was unremarkable, unless you count the concussion. Oh, and the time he nearly got arrested. And the time his dad made him smoke a cigar so he wouldn't try cigarettes. After giving up on a calling as a professional Pong player, Tom married his high school sweetheart and moved off to Nashville. These days, he spends his time piddling in the yard and writing novels. His hobbies include working jigsaw puzzles, trying out dad jokes on his grown kids, woodworking, and using leftover potted meat cans from Y2K for target practice. Tom is a full-time author and a member of American Christian Fiction Writers. He is currently on the Suspense Thriller Publishing Board for Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas and lives with his wife outside Dallas, Texas. Welcome, Tom.
Right. Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here, especially because we're such a long distance away, and that makes me constantly interrupt writing people's writing schedules at the very beginning of their day.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Anything's better than writing, right? So,
so you're in the middle of the book, is what you're saying.
I am actually the sequel to what we're going to talk about. 3/4 done or so. Yeah. Which is pretty good because the deadline was only 3 days ago. So.
Oh, nice. Not too late, yeah. Just the right amount of late.
That's right.
Well, listen, let's talk about that first before we get into all the, amazing, wonderful writer things that I tend to talk about with writers on the show. Very first thing, congratulations. Your brand new book, Collision of Lies, came out today for you, 2 days ago for our listeners.
It did, and it's like anyone who's ever published a book knows or been involved in the process, it's a long journey to get there. And so it kind of, in a way, it's been forever, and it also kind of snuck up on me. So I'm just glad it's finally out there for people to read.
Excellent. Do you have secret plans to drive to a bookstore later today so you can go, there's my book?
I can't really get into that, but yeah, I probably will. So
yeah, I guess they wouldn't have secret plans if we talked about it here on the show.
Yeah, that's right. Just watch Facebook for pictures of me, pointing at it in the bookstore and stuff. So
nice. Well, everybody loves to hear, the stories of the first call, the first contract. This is actually your fourth book, first in the new series. But if it's not too much to ask, what's today like? Does it feel euphoric, or is it at all climactic or anticlimactic?
It's in a way, all the people around me who have been involved seem more excited about it than I am. And I think a lot of that is my personality. I'm just not a big rah-rah type person. But it's writers know the big thing you want is, sure, the big paycheck, but you also just want the book out there. You put so much work into it. You want people to read it. So that's what I'm most excited about is finally I can talk to people and not have to worry about spoilers and that kind of stuff. So I guess to answer your question, I'm excited that it's out there, mostly because I can move on to talking about other things to some extent. So
that's a good point. I mean, there's probably a certain amount of the things that you couldn't even talk about because no one had read the book yet. At least by now, you've got, quite a few fans who bought it on the first day.
Right.
Already read it now.
Right. As well as, the launch team. And, and there's been a solid 2 months building up to this where all we've done is focus on Collision of Lies on the book. So I'm glad to be able to put a lot of that behind me and move forward. So
nice. Well, listen, let's just back up a little bit. I saw the words police procedural on your website and suspense on your website. So let's just go back to wherever you feel like starting. We could talk about Pong, though we would probably have to explain it to some of our listeners. Though I have to say, as a little tangent, I just finished working a contract at a video game company where my husband works here in Sweden.
I did not know that.
Yes. Well, we can talk about it more later.
Okay.
So since I was working in the video game company, like every day there was 1,000 things coming at me that I'd heard a little bit about, but didn't know that much about, including like the massive degree to which there are these huge tournaments for video games and the number of people who watch them live online. And I'm thinking, can you imagine a Pong tournament?
Well, I believe I would win, but it's interesting because the sequel that we're not going to talk a lot about actually has some video game involvement in it. So, yeah. So.
All right. Well, now I'm going to have to know more about it whenever we can know more about it.
Okay.
Okay. So back to you. I mean, really, the show is about you, not about 1,000 other things that are in your bio that I want to say. Oh, Stanley Cup. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about
Go Preds.
Go Red Wings.
Our arch rivals. Well, they used to be. So.
Yeah. The Red Wings are just taking a break. They wanted, a few other people to have a chance.
Yeah. Well, the Preds are taking a break this year too, I think. So.
Okay. So once again, back to Tom. So tell us, when did you start? Have you always been writing? Did you pick it up one day and go, I should try this? And then how did you get into, or why, however you want to describe your journey?
Yeah. No, I did not always want to be a writer. I was an English major in college, didn't graduate, but I have always liked books and that kind of stuff, but never really thought about writing. And then X amount of years ago was my wife and I's 30th anniversary. And I thought, I ought to just put a little something together. I could write a little something. And it was appropriately awful. And so I started thinking that, well, this really, is more than just sitting down and writing. And so, several conferences and a lot of reading other authors and going into that and then going through the process. It became something that I have, I guess, a love-hate relationship with. I like to write the end more than anything. But it's turned out to be something more than I ever thought it would be. So I'm thrilled to write. But like I said, the best part to me is like today when the books go out there and other people can say, either A, I love your writing, or B, you're a hack. Either way, at least you've read it. And I always say there's that scene in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie where the guy tells Johnny Depp that, oh, you're the worst pirate I've ever heard of. And he says, but you have heard of me. And that's the way I am with my writing. So that's where we go. So, it wasn't, I didn't grow up wanting to write, but I kind of evolved into it.
Nice. And then is police procedurals and suspense your books of choice for reading, or how did you?
It is. Although right now I'm on kind of a nonfiction kick, reading a lot of biographies, and I'm a World War II buff, so reading a lot of that. But it's just something that naturally came to me as I can't imagine writing anything beside that. I don't know if I would know how to. So I like it because it requires me to do research. It requires me to learn things I didn't know. And that's what we used to watch a lot of that on TV. Not so much anymore. But that's other than the true crime stuff. So that's why I write it. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I have to say that I finished Collision of Lies last night, I think. And even though there's a lot of other things that I also really need to be doing for work, but I was like, dang it, I need to find out who did this and why. So, I have a lot of more work that I have to do when we're done here because I was busy reading yesterday.
Oh, good. And that's somebody asked the other day, how do you know when a book is done? And I'm actually on another website where we're talking about that. With Collision of Lies, I'm not a happily ever after kind of guy. And so although there may very well be a happily ever after ending in this book. But it's just one of those, I'm a pantser versus a plotter. And I don't know if that's a term your listeners are familiar with.
Probably.
So a lot of times I'm not sure how the book is going to end either. And that's what keeps me up, is trying to figure out, I'll write myself into a corner and say, how do we get out of this one type thing? So that's this was without a doubt my favorite book to write, because I got to develop new characters that I thought were strong. Especially Amara, the lead protagonist, had to be a female character, love strong female characters. And so it was a fun book for me to write, but it left, I guess it left a few things open for you to debate what happened and what didn't happen. And so I'm addressing those in the sequel as well, to a certain extent. Got to leave them guessing. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that I noticed. It looked like for your first series and for this one, you're a writer who likes to take a single protagonist and carry them through a series.
Well, there will definitely be a book 2 in this series because it's under contract. And like I said, should have been finished 3 days ago. But I'm waiting for the characters to tell me what to do next, really. That's what I told the publisher. They didn't accept that. So I do, primarily because there's usually, the way I write, there's usually more than one book in the character. And if I've gotten to know this character, I don't want to push them off to the side and say, okay, let's go invent new characters now. Although obviously each book will have different characters, I like to follow that one through. And so in the first set of 3 books, the Jeremy Winter series, I think I'm done with that series. I mean, it kind of closed, but I'm not sure. There may be a point where I go back because there's been so much positive feedback, so many people asking for more that, I might go back to that one day. So, because I'm kind of interested in what happens to Jeremy too, but Amara's kind of pushed him to the side. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to say that books and movies and stuff that are following one character. I mean, I own every single Bourne movie. I tried reading one of the books. I can't remember which one. And I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, this is a boy's book. This is a girl's book. And sometimes the boys' books, I'm like, too boys-ish for me. But I love the movies. And I don't even care that, what was it, the 5th movie was about Jeremy Riven.
Right. Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner was the character.
Riven? I didn't even care that it was about a different character because they were talking about Bourne also. And I was just like, yes, I'm into this.
And I feel the same. I love the Bourne movies too, although I haven't read any of the books. And I really like the John Wick series too, because I think the character is a little bit flat and one-dimensional, and that's okay for what it is, an action character. But the whole culture that is built around that character, I just think is very interesting. And I believe they're making a TV series out of that. Not out of him, but out of the, I think the hotel that he goes to, out of that. So there'd be different characters. So I like that kind of stuff as well. So.
I got to tell my husband because he loves that series.
Oh, yeah.
John Wick.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about writing. Really, I'm happy for you to go off on whatever kind of tangents. You and I were talking beforehand that you really like talking about writing as a writer.
I do.
Jump in wherever you feel like. People like to know things like, what's your usual day? How do you get the most done? I've been talking to the audience about how I've decided to step away from what everybody else has decided is the good practice of writing every day. And instead, I'm much better I'm kind of a project person. So I like to have big blocks. And so now I'm getting like all of my writing done in about 1 to 1.5 days a week instead of trying to make it every day. I'm getting so much more done and enjoying it. So really, any place that you want to jump in about writing, let's just talk about writing.
Well, I've run the whole lineage of writing tips and writing and how to force yourself to sit down and write every day. And I think the things that work best for me are the word count quota doesn't work for me. The setting a timer, whether that's 30 minutes or 4 hours or whatever it may be, closing down email, Facebook, and everything else, and doing nothing except working on the writing is the thing that works best for me as far as actually doing it. I'm not very good at following that advice, but that I find leaves me a good flow and gives me the focus I need. The other thing that is far and away the best piece of advice I ever heard is stop, either mid-sentence or in the middle of a scene or whatever, whenever you stop, so that when you come back to it, you already know you can jump right in and start going. You're not starting a new scene. You're not like, okay, what have I got to, refresh my memory type thing. You can just jump right back into it. The problem with all that, of course, is that life gets in the way sometimes or quite often. So you may not be able to do that, but I don't put a lot of pressure on myself to write. And again, you're going to cut that before my publisher hears it, right? So but I have to be in a spot where I enjoy the scene I'm writing. And if I'm not enjoying writing that scene, then the reader's not going to enjoy reading it. So that's where I do best, is sitting, knowing I'm going to have, I like what I'm writing. I know where I left off yesterday. I can jump right back in tomorrow morning. And I'm definitely a morning writer. I don't do much work in the afternoon. So
yeah,
writing wise, and I'm retired, so it's a little bit different for me. So
nice. Yeah, I've tried a lot of different things. Unfortunately, being a morning person, I've noticed that I can't really put my entire day into the morning. Like, oh, I'm a morning person, I should go to the gym in the morning, but I'm also a morning person, so I should write in the morning, and I should also do this in the morning. And then I'm like, okay, it's 2:00 in the afternoon, and I haven't gotten all of my morning things done yet.
See, I solved a lot of that problem by just scratching that whole gym thing. So no, I take a walk. I get up early in the morning, walk around the neighborhood for a couple of miles before everybody else is awake, and that, put on some music, and then come home to a 2.5-year-old that's ready to get up. So,
So you're really getting up early if you're getting up before a 2-year-old.
Yeah, but I've always been an early riser. So
yeah. So let's talk about the plotting versus seat of the pants writing. Do you have like 2 or 3 places in the story where you're pretty sure you're going to get to this point, and this will be the end? Or do you kind of wake up in the morning and go, I literally have no idea what's going to happen?
No. My books always start the same way, and that is with one idea as far as, wouldn't it be interesting if this happened? Collision of Lies started when my wife and I were at a restaurant one day. I think it was breakfast. This is one of those, the story changes every time I tell it things, but it's mostly true. And I'm watching a woman eat her breakfast, and, everybody's got their cell phones or whatever. And I thought, I wonder who she's talking to. And then that became, well, wouldn't it be interesting if she'd got a text from somebody that she thought was dead? And then it would have to be somebody important. And in this case, in Collision of Lies, it's her son. And I don't write paranormal. So it had to be something. So I had to take that, turn it into a realistic situation. And that's all I knew when the book started. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea whether, what's the deal is with her son, with her family, how it's going to end. I don't know any of that when I start. I let the characters tell me what's going to happen. Problem with that is it requires a lot of rewrites, because you end up writing yourself into a corner, and then a character will tell you, no, I didn't do that. And you have to go back and change that and that kind of stuff. So, but I tried plotting, and it doesn't work for me. I can't do it.
So are you saying that you literally just had this one little idea, and then you went to a brand new Word document or Scrivener document, and you just started typing?
Mm-hmm. I write the first chapter and think, I like that. Now, what exactly is going on here? And that's where I have to start going back in. And, that's when I'll start doing a little bit of character creation. And, but plot-wise, I don't know. My whole theory is if I'm surprised by what comes next, so is the reader. So I just kind of make it up as I go. And then, and that does require, like for the sequel, I'm going back now and saying, I like this or I don't like that. So it's not like it's all a bed of roses doing it this way. But it does work best for me. But I literally, will just from that one incident, that's where the book came from. And I make everything up from there. I lie for a living. So
right. I love saying that. It kind of freaks some people out. Have you noticed?
Yeah, but that's more and more common these days, even if you're not a writer. So that's
true.
So
yeah, this is not a political show, so we won't take that any further. But
I didn't say anything about politics. So.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
I know.
Oh, okay. So speaking of fiction, so now the other thing is that Collision of Lies is full of police officers. You've got a Texas Ranger, which I know nothing about except for things that I've read in like Western romances.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then you've got FBI, and I don't think you had any Mexican police like in the scene. They were just outside of the scene. But that's a lot of different agencies. So where do you say I better stop and look up some things? And where do you just kind of like, I'm just going to write through it and then I'll go back and fix it? Or?
Pretty early because, for instance, Collision of Lies, like you said, has a Texas Ranger in there. And I didn't know anything about Texas Rangers either. So at that point, as I'm developing the character, I want to make sure that I don't create something that's basic to her that could never happen with a Texas Ranger. So I would do research at that point and say, okay, this will work or this won't work, or would they really have a Texas Ranger involved in this? And, what's their area and what do they cover and that kind of stuff. And with the FBI, I had a lot of familiarity. I got to get some more coffee with that, just because the Jeremy Winter series books, Jeremy Winter is an FBI agent. So I knew something about that. I'm still doing research. The book is based in San Antonio. Amara is a detective in the property crimes division when she stumbles upon this case. So I'm still doing some research for book 2 about what would be a little more realistic for the San Antonio Police Department. But honestly, a couple of places I get a lot of help from are Reddit, of all places. I don't know. There's a subreddit on there, Ask Law Enforcement Officers, where you can ask things and, a cop will give you the answer. For instance, about last in the Jeremy Winter series of books, I'm like, do cops really say perp? Get the perp. And to a person, they said, no, we don't call them perps. We have a lot of names for them, some of which I can't use in my books because I don't use profanity in my writing. But perps is not one of the terms that they would typically use. And then I also learned that the big mirror, one-way mirror stuff, completely fake. No police department has that stuff. It's all a media thing. They're like, why? We have cameras. Why would we need a big one-way mirror? That doesn't make sense. So you learn things like that. And that's what I try to, I'm not big. I'll be honest, one of my favorite authors has always been Tom Clancy, or was Tom Clancy, but he was way too technical in his books. And it really slows the story down, I thought. So I try not to put too much in there, but little tidbits here and there. So. Yeah.
I noticed you also, you're very good at banter and having some characters who with interestingly weird quirks.
That's the banter is pretty much me and my wife. Every conversation is pretty much the conversation. I put it in those terms. Would this be a realistic, unstilted conversation that we would have? And it is. And then the quirky characters, the medical examiner in Collision of Lies was the one that I'm like, I'm just going to find the weirdest things I can find. And this guy's going to do them. And he's the guy that when, if this series ever becomes anything on Netflix or a movie or something, this guy's going to have his own spinoff. because he's just so out there. He's got a little bit of Monk in him. He's got a little bit of House in him. He's got a little bit of all the, back to the Quincy days. If you kids will have to Google that, but that. So, but yeah, that's the banter, the realistic dialogue. Is one thing that I really work hard on. So,
yeah. So, do you think that you'll probably stay in the and I feel like I'm not sure whether or not I should say these with like a slash in between them or a comma because they're two different things, but the police procedural suspense area of writing, do you think this is the spot you're going to stay for a while, or do you have some other ideas too?
I do. At some point, I am bound to determine I'm going to write a humor novel, but humor is so hard to write. So I don't know that that'll ever realistically happen. It'll be the story. My autobiography will probably be my humor novel. But police procedurals, I think so, because I've already got just a list of things that I'm like, well, I could build a story around that. I have no idea why that happened, and it's not usually something that I'll see, in a news report. It's just I'll drive by something and say, well, that'd be a really weird place to find a body, wouldn't it? And it goes from there. So
yeah. I will mention, just in case you haven't done this yet, that maybe you might not want to. I was on an anniversary trip with my husband when we lived in Wellington, New Zealand, where he was working on film. We just took a weekend and went up to this beautiful lake area, and there was what do you call it? Hot air coming up out of the earth. It's hot springs or a geyser type thing, or just yeah. So we're walking around all this area, and like there's literally boiling water and boiling mud to either side of the path. I'm like, this is crazy. And at one point I was like, oh my gosh, this would be a great place to throw a body. Yeah. And John's just looking at me like, are you trying to tell me something? I'm like, no. I mean, I'm just thinking about it from a writing perspective. He's like, it's our anniversary. Maybe you would want to talk about that on another time. Yeah, but it's not something you can turn off. It's something, it isn't. Stephen King has a quote, and I don't read much Stephen King, haven't in years. And I'm going to paraphrase this, but it's basically, as a writer, our job is not to create ideas or come up with ideas. It's to just open your eyes to what's around you. The ideas are already there. You just got to find, know them and go with them. So yeah. There's a book that I've been sort of kind of working on, really on and off since grad school. I was writing this bit for my master's degree, and there was a whole bunch of things that I really liked about it, but it was kind of going off in two different genre directions, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do about that. And anyway, got involved in other things, but there was one point when I was thinking about it so much, like every day, and I was thinking, I think I'm going to go back and work on this again. And it was like during a period of 4 or 5 months where I was like, thank you, real people in the news. Like, I don't even have to come up with anything weird. And I can just pull it right out of the news. Yes. My favorite quote about writing is from Tom Clancy. Imagine that and it is that the difference between fiction and reality is that fiction has to make sense, because a reader will be in a book and say, oh, that could never happen, regardless of whether or not it actually did happen. So I 100% believe that. That's my favorite quote. So nice. I like it. All right. So I want to ask you about other writerly things. Let's see. So one of the things that you do is you mentor writers. So tell us a little bit about that. How does that work? I do. I love looking at other people's writing who are either new or have been around a while and saying, I don't know why this is going the way it's going, but I just like to take it and say, and all I do is ask questions, like, why is this character doing this? Convince me of that. You can get into the show and tell and all that kind of stuff. But to me, it's much more of a base level. Those are all things you can learn. The main thing is sitting there and going, I understand that this guy is your killer,
But why is he doing it? Well, he's just a bad guy. Well, that's not going to cut it. There are lots of bad guys in there. You got to get more specific. You got to get down to that level. And even if it doesn't ever make it into a book, it. And that's the way I am with a lot of my characters. I know them. I know what they would and wouldn't do. In a lot of cases, I know the exact house they live in because I've been on Google Maps and picked it out. But I don't, and I think other writers, once you get that idea in your head that you can drill down to that level, it changes everything. And you have to know them just like I'm talking to you now. They have to be able to picture in their head that they're talking to one of their characters. And that's where I see the biggest problem is the writing is formal, a little stilted, and the characters are too flat. So that's why I like to mentor. I like to see people, and then I'm like, okay, rewrite it. Let's take another look at it, and then we'll drill down further. And once they can get usually just one chapter, the rest just comes. Once that light bulb goes off, the rest just comes to them. So I love doing that.
Oh, nice. Now, there's probably some people listening who feel like, or have been told by people reading, it's a little formal. It doesn't make me feel like I'm really reading a novel. What are some of the exercises or advice that you give to people to help them to break out of that?
I can tell you this little tidbit about myself. When I was in high school, which was, that was almost 10 years ago now, Really, you laughed a little too hard at that, Kitty. That was so. My AP English teacher told me, handed me back a paper and said, your writing is perfect. It's your punctuation, blah blah blah, A+. She said it's also very boring. And then the guy next to me, she's like, I like reading his stuff, and he made a C on his paper, and I'm like, well, I'll take the A in boring over the C and, whatever. So, but she was right. And I don't use full sentences constantly. I don't, like when talking to a character, I wouldn't use your name in every other paragraph. And I wouldn't, the stuff that it just has to come across with a much better flow. And people don't talk in whole sentences usually. So when I write in, quote, deeper point of view, whatever that becomes, this week. I like to keep sentences shorter. I like to, if my character's in a room and she's like, looking at a black sofa and saying, oh, that's a brand new leather black sofa. How does he afford that? It's just simply going to be, something like, new sofa must be nice. And that's all the reader's going to read. So I just think it makes it easier. And in today's world, it's much more what people want to see. I try to keep chapters short for the same reason, so that people can stop at the end of a chapter, although hopefully they won't want to, and pick it up, right away if they're sitting in the drive-through line and they can pick something up, whatever it might be. So.
Nice. Yeah. I have to say that the short chapters really work well to keep the pace faster if you're writing that kind of a novel.
Right. And that's, that's the other thing. You learn a lot of things when you write these about the more tension in a scene, the shorter the sentences need to be, and the quicker the reactions from the characters. But then you need to pace it so that when something is happening and you're getting that emotional response from a character about something, you're going to go a little bit longer. You're going to dig, and that's the whole thing. The story should be a roller coaster ride, and you're turning the page. And I'm a huge believer that every chapter needs to end on some sort of a cliffhanger. Something has to happen in every chapter that moves the story forward. And if it doesn't, it's got to go. And the chapter needs to end with the reader like, it's 1:30 in the morning. He writes short chapters. I can do one more and go with that. So
yeah, I have to say that is my favorite kind of book. And I like to write that way too, but it's so fun when you're like, no, just one more chapter. And then at some point I'll think that this is what happens to me. I think it actually happened because I was trying to finish your book before the interview. So I'm pretty sure it happened to me a couple of nights ago. I'm reading short chapters. I want to know what happens next. okay, just one more chapter and then I'll go to sleep. It's really not that late. And then I'm reading it. And then like the story is still progressing in my mind, though it's gone off in a slightly different direction. And then I wake up when my Kindle hits me on the nose. I'm like, oh, okay. I think I actually can't do any more physically.
So what you're saying is my book put you to sleep? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, your book brought me into my own little dream world version of what was happening.
So.
But no, my Kindle woke me up.
Yeah.
My poor nose. Yeah. I've been hit before.
Yeah. Are you I'll ask you a question. Kindle or paperback, which is your preference?
See, the thing about the Kindle is that I can read at night without keeping my husband up. So that is the big thing with the Kindle.
You need to change your priorities. So if
I like this guy who sleeps next to me, though.
Well, okay. Then okay.
Yeah.
But I would have answered that, Kindle 100%, but I am really much more back into paperbacks now. And it's just something that a Kindle can't do as far as, holding a paperback book. And so.
Yeah. Now, I was just going to say about the holding, though. So I have just such a huge pile of books that, like, I really want to read this book. But now I'm having to go through. I've moved so many times and I bought books in every country I've been in, even knowing I was going to have to pay to move them again.
Yeah.
But so there's so many books that are definitely interesting enough that I want to read them. But now I keep having to look at, like, based on my age and the projected length of life, if I take really good care of myself, do I actually have enough time to read all of the books that I haven't? Yeah.
Yeah, but they look so much better behind you than just a Kindle on the wall or something. So that's the thing. Because even on a Kindle, everybody gets their free book and they end up with 3,000 books. Yeah. And how do you go through that and decide? I don't know. I mean, you sort by. I think you start by sorting by my name, Threadgill,
right,
and starting there. And
definitely. So the spelling again is.
Threadgill, just like it sounds. First name Tom.
All right, we're going to start there. But yeah, honestly, one of the things that bugs me about my Kindle is that I can't sort the books into groups and have them stay there.
Really?
They will sort into these categories, but then they're also all 3,000 of them are still listed on the homepage. And I'm just like, okay, I can't see 3,000 titles. Like, my mind can't process it.
I'll talk to Jeff Bezos later and see if I can get that fixed. Yeah, no problem.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, but the only thing that can be a problem with the paperback, hardcovers, very heavy, and definitely feel even worse than a Kindle when they fall on your face at night.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And for the last 2 years, I've been waiting for me to have like a whole week of nothing going on. So obviously I'm going to have to dump this plan. I started an 800-page book 3 of a Robin Hobb series. That book is ginormous. I have to hold it with 2 hands. So there's a certain amount of, I just needed to go to the gym and get strong enough to hold this book for as long as it takes.
I tell my wife I'm at the age now where I buy laundry detergent, not based on cost, but on size of the container. The smaller ones work better for me now than the great big giant ones. So a big book like that is never going to happen at my house. That would have to go on Kindle. So.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I love them both. I love them all. I mean, this is just, you can't even see the books that are still on the floor because I can't figure out where in my limited space. I know, right? Yeah. I love books. I love reading. I love stories. I've heard so many writers talk about, we don't have a TV or I hardly ever watch Netflix. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I will take a story anywhere it comes. If somebody at church is telling me a story about something, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to have to catch the next bus because I need to know the end of the story.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't really care where the stories are coming from. Mm. So is there any other kind of advice stuff that you kind of have on your mind that you love to share, or problems that you've noticed come up a lot? Or
I think for me, once you have the initial idea of what kind of this book is going to be, it's all about the characters. If you don't have characters, every character has to have something likable about them, whether it's your serial killer or whatever it may be. Yes, I believe there are people that are 100% evil out there, but nobody wants to read about that guy. So you need something that at least makes them, oh, I can kind of see why he's doing it. Don't agree with it, but I can kind of see. So start with the characters. Think of things or reach out on things that are so far beyond what you would normally write that you have to do a little research as far as the character goes. Like, why is her background this, or why does this? I don't subscribe to the school of thought that's kind of floating around now that, you can't realistically write that character because you don't know what that character, I think that's what we do. If you don't like what I've written, that's fine. But you can't tell us what, we can and we can't write or show on the screen or whatever that may be. So, stretch yourself and learn to, like my medical examiner was basically a Google search for, I don't know, some of the weirdest life pro tips you can find that are kind of really out there somewhere. How do you eat Cheetos? And this guy's like eating them with the chopsticks because he doesn't want to get his fingers dirty and that kind of stuff. So I think if the character becomes interesting to you, then it's interesting to the reader. And they'll follow that character all the way through, even an average plot. So if you can give them a really good plot, then you got one shot at the reader. And if you get them hooked on that first book, then, and if you're in this industry to ever make a nickel in it, it's not going to be on that first book unless you hit a 50 Shades of Grey type of, and whatever that is. And then, so you got to be in it for the long haul. So develop your characters.
Yeah. I like that. I just had a question and I'm listening to you and then I forgot my question. Rewriting. You were talking about rewriting. So for instance, when you come up with, maybe not this specific thing, but when you came up with the idea of, you read something weird about somebody who eats Cheetos with chopsticks, and you're like, oh, I'm going to have my medical examiner do that because he's my particularly quirky character.
Sure.
How much of these changes are you seeing going into the post first draft? Or how much of it?
Most of that stuff I'll catch on the first draft. The post first draft is much more, and actually I enjoyed that process much more than the first draft. Is much more. This just doesn't work, and I've tried to force something, or it's I'm in love with this chapter, but never mind that it doesn't work. So I can either keep this chapter and rewrite the whole book, or I can get rid of this chapter. So after the first draft, which I'm kind of doing on the sequel a little bit now, it's much more about fine tuning the plot, because like I said, I don't really know what's going to happen, and things may have happened later in the book that now no longer work quite as well at the beginning. So I'll have to alter those a little bit, that kind of stuff. But by the time I did, the first run through on the book, my characters are pretty much set in stone. Although there have been times when I think the last Jeremy Winter book I wrote, finished the book, actually sent it off to the publisher, and, they read it and were like, something doesn't seem right. And I realized, the wrong character is the killer. And so I had to go back and make some changes to that book, which surprised me. And if I'd been listening to the characters, I'd have known that as I went through the book. So it's got a little bit of a surprise ending. So that's the kind of stuff that I'd catch up with. So
okay. And so when you're making suggestions to other writers, I assume that you're probably asking them first, what kind of writer are you?
Mm-hmm.
Seat of the pants, totally plotter, or somewhere in the middle. Right. And then you help them with advice based on how their brain normally works.
Right. And I do, I've worked, actually most of the people I think I've worked with are plotters, not necessarily pantsers. But it doesn't really matter. You do whatever works for you. And, at some point there's probably some mix between the two. But it's all about, like I said, it's about the characters. You can plot all you want, and you can have the best plot in the world. world. But if your characters don't ring true to the reader, you don't have a book that people are going to read. They're going to look at it and say, well, one, they're probably not going to finish it. And two, if they do, they're going to say, it was okay, but something, it could have been better, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. Now, do you keep in your mind sort of the idea of your target reader, the kind of person who reads a police procedural or a suspense is probably, looking for this sort of thing, wants this kind of a feel, wants this kind of a pace, and I'm going to keep this reader in mind, so I'm giving them what they're looking for? Or are you thinking, this is what I like, and therefore that's how I'm going to write it?
My official publisher answer is it's all about the reader.
Right.
My answer is it's all about the writer. So I write what I would like to read, and I write it in a way that I would like to read it. I think when you start, yes, you need to know who your audience is. My target audience is basically any adult that likes to read. My books can be read by kids because I don't have profanity or sexual situations in them. But, I write about serial killers and stuff, so there is going to be a little bit of gore possibly, or suspense, although Collision of Lies doesn't really have any of that. It's much more of a mystery than the last series I wrote. So I write what I would like to read, and I believe there's an audience out there for that. And it's hard, overwhelmingly readers are women, females. But I like to write books that I think guys would like to read too. Yeah. So, that's where I go. The reader is in mind, but only from a perspective of, nobody's going to believe that, or that just doesn't sound realistic perspective. Not so much that, I know this little niche genre over here. And that's the thing. I guess if I wrote in a niche genre, that would be totally different. But mine's a pretty broad market. So,
yeah. Now, in case listeners are thinking, well, I like the way this guy thinks, and I write similar sorts of things. Are you actively mentoring writers right now? Is it a case-by-case basis?
It's kind of a case-by-case basis. I think, finished mentoring one, and that went pretty well. And it's, this is kind of at some point I made, but I don't charge for that. I just hear from people that say, and because there's so many people out there that want to, writing is easy. And that's really not the person I'm looking for. It's the person that writing is hard. And what can I do to improve what I write and to make it better? So I don't know, maybe at some point I'll reach out for a new mentee. Is that the right word? I guess. Yeah. And see where that goes, because like I said, it is good, and it's something I really enjoy doing. So right now I would say I'm between them, I think, because I just got an email yesterday from her agent saying, love it, looks great. So we'll see.
What a nice compliment to both of you.
We'll see. Yeah. Well, I think it's mostly to me, but you can.
Oh, right,
you can.
Of course, that's what I meant.
Yeah, you could take it out. No, because I always tell them the same thing. Look, bottom line is it's your book. It's not mine. My name's not going to be on it anywhere. So write what you want to write in a way that you want to write it. Everything I say is nothing more than my opinion. So do what works for you.
And I think that actually is another piece of good advice. I feel like if each writer could get their own individual way of seeing the world on the page, then each person would have a much greater sense possibility of success, right, because they're not accidentally or on purpose trying to be like someone else who's successful or gave them advice or whatever.
Well, and that first attempt at a book way back when, which hopefully all copies of have been destroyed and the record's gone, and if it shows up somewhere, I don't. Hopefully, I'm in the ground before it does. Yeah. Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. And you can look at it and you can see, how pretentious it sounds, and how, when your wife's reading it and she says, "Well, I kind of like, this sentence right here is pretty good," and you're like, well, you're 40 pages into it, and you're like, this is your wife, and you're like, so then that's when you start to realize, okay, this is a little harder than I thought it could be. So
yeah. And I think that's probably another great piece of advice. if you're kind of still new to it, like just relax about the fact that it's hard, because everything is hard when you first do it. I mean,
Absolutely.
I just started going back to the gym again, doing strength training, not just running on the treadmill and pretending that I had some idea of what to do with all the other equipment. But I actually have a friend who's a personal trainer who said, do this, this, and this, and do it this many times with this weight. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's a recipe.
Right.
I can follow a recipe.
Right.
The first day I was like, I can't believe I promised him I would do what he says. This is terrible. I hate it. But I think that everything in life is like that. And when we can just relax a little bit about the things that we're not good at and just remember practically everything takes practice. There aren't that many prodigies, and they're not a prodigy at everything. Like maybe somebody's a music prodigy or a math prodigy. They're not a prodigy at everything. So honestly, there's just a lot less pressure that we can just let go of.
That's exactly right. You know, I'm sitting here listening to you say that about the gym, and I'm thinking there's all kinds of weird equipment in there and stuff. And what a great place to kill somebody. You know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, I'm like, well, that would be awesome because, you know, they all look like torture devices anyway. So you can, so.
Okay, now you got me thinking.
I know.
I'm doing it in my head right now. I'm not really focused on you. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I'm used to that. So.
So you have several women in your life then?
No, honey.
I didn't mean
Sophia, I don't know what you're talking about.
No.
So.
No. Of course I meant people. I'm going to stop and go in another direction.
Okay.
I don't know how to get out of that one.
Okay.
That's part of the rewrite stage.
That's right. This will never see YouTube. So.
Never. No. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, Mrs. Tom. I didn't mean anything by it.
She's used to that too. So.
Oh, you know what? One last question before we go. Because I'm looking at the time thinking, yeah, unfortunately, it's time for me to stop talking about writing with another writer. But so tell us about, how does it work with your wife? You're retired or semi-retired, but you've got another career. So I'm not sure if you can call yourself retired.
That's right.
But so you've got people in the house with you. How do you make this work?
Well, she's not retired, but she does work from home. So we just recently moved, and for the first time, our offices are in the same room, and will probably stay that way. You know, we've been married for a long, long time, and I would tell you the exact number of years if I knew it. But it's a long time, and thank you, babe. 37 years.
Hi, Mrs. Tom.
37 years we've been married. 6 happy years. So
So you got married when you were 14, then is what you're saying.
we were in Tennessee at the time, so it was legal.
Right,
So
my husband keeps telling everybody we were married when we were 12 every time the number of, because
Oh,
our
yeah.
anniversary is coming in May.
Yeah.
Yes, he doesn't
But she works from home too, and it's a non-issue. You know, we do what we do and wouldn't have it any other way. It works fine with us. So
Nice.
she's much more patient than I am, and I love her dearly. So yeah, she's in there gagging right now. So
Well, for everyone else who's listening, I apologize. A whole bunch of people who liked you up until now hate you because now you've said that it's easy to work at home with your spouse at home also.
Well, like I said, she's much better at working. If I had a real job, I could never work from home. I don't have the discipline for that, which is why I missed my deadline on my writing, I guess. But she does. She does a good job at it. So
Nice. Tom, this has been great fun talking to you.
I've enjoyed it.
I'm glad. It would be sad if you were like, please, can we end now?
Can we?
Actually, we can.
I need to clarify some of those comments about the other women with my wife. So it's going to be, I've got to go buy some flowers and, some.
Well, and also you might consider, if your editor is a woman, buying her some flowers, because we have been talking about, you not working and having a deadline.
My editor is a woman, as is my agent. So yes, probably, it was, I don't know which author said it, and probably a bunch of them said, I love deadlines, the sound of the whooshing sound as they go past. So that's pretty much where I am.
I hear you. Yes, I've heard that sound.
So,
Okay, so Collision of Lies,
right.
brand new, hot off the press right this minute. Yay!
Yay.
Book 1 of a new series. Tell us, book 2, do you know when it's coming out?
It is in the spring 2021 catalog, from Baker Publishing, which you can go to their website and get Collision of Lies, or you can go anywhere books are sold and get Collision of Lies. But it is on track, kind of. It has to be done because they've already started printing. Everything's a year in advance in publishing. So it will be out in spring 2021. You can also go to my website, the appropriately named tomthreadgill.com, for more information on that. And I'll have stuff about the sequel pretty soon, or you can sign up for newsletter and all the usual author stuff there too.
Excellent. Are you a social media guy, or people just pretty much go to your website to find out what's up?
Yes, I am on social media.
All right.
I am not a social media guy, but I am on social media.
I have accounts.
I have accounts. I have Facebook followers. Yeah.
Well done.
I think I paid almost $5 and got no.
Wow.
Nice. No.
Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been great fun, and honestly, so many great nuggets and tips and bits of encouragement for listeners, which is what I always want to do in a show, is make you look great, which
Thanks.
Honestly, I think you look really great right now if you're watching on YouTube. Yep.
Well, thank you. And I always like to leave nuggets everywhere I go, so I appreciate that. So,
well done. Well, so long as the nuggets are not from rabbits or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know why you have to go there, but okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly what
a nice girl.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. I was just going to let you go there, not me. So,
right, because my whole point is to make you look good, even if it makes me look bad.
Right. So you've got a tough job.
I'm sorry.
Trying to make me look good. So.
Well, thanks again for being on the show. Congratulations again on the brand new book coming out today.
Thanks, Kitty.